Hello, and welcome to the Time and Place podcast. Musician/painter The Pxrtals, aka Levi Salud, joins me for a time and place conversation. How are you doing?
Great, Mattz. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
We had a lovely lunch.
We had the greatest lunch ever. The Spicy Bite.
The Spicy Bite, yes.
Buffet. 3 plates.
It was 2 years in the making, yeah. Well worth it.
All right, well, I'll start with my first question here. How long have you been doing music, and tell us why you love it?
I suppose first memory of maybe being introduced to music was walking down the road from my parents' neighbor's property, the Dicks, and we were walking back to my parents' place, and Mom turned to me and said, "Levi, would you like to learn violin or piano?" And I thought about it for a second. I said, violin. So I started playing violin around 3.5, but was somewhat of a difficult student because I think just of the complexity of the instrument itself, and that I was in a lot of ways quite immature in my development of it, just resisting sort of the work ethic required to the discipline, the attention to detail, or the discipline overall to, it sort of had a rough start, and apologies to Mom for putting her through some pretty arduous practice sessions and upsetting her. I feel bad about that, but to this day she loves to hear me play, and I love to play the violin for her, and so I'm glad to have pursued and continued forth, persevered. However, Mattz was just showing me some tapes that he acquired after lunch, and we had MC Hammer's. This is his debut, right? 1990.
I think he had one maybe before Please Hammer Don't Hurt Him, but I'm not too sure actually.
Please Hammer Don't Hurt Him was one of the first tapes I remember, and I remember jumping up and down my bed. Can't touch this.
Oh, what a hit. What a hit.
Can't. And I'm just like jumping on my bed.
Yeah.
And maybe that it was perhaps a combination of my parents, who are both my whole family is incredibly musical. It's daunting. Uncle is a professional opera singer. I had an uncle who's a great guitarist and who's played in bands all his life and has such a diverse playing skill. Cousin Etienne is he's basically any instrument he touches he perfects, or he's now like a super badass pedal steel player, and is playing in a great band, Wolf Willow. Check them out if you haven't. They're doing like this 1940s Tex-Mex swing kind of deal that it was somewhat unheard of these days, but is just fantastic, and so forth. My parents, Mom sang and plays piano and played accordion, and Dad guitar. We were actually jamming just last weekend, which is really cool. Like, he was playing guitar, he jumped on the keyboard, and we just rock out, and so they're incredibly artistic in their own right. So is their encouragement of me playing music, as well as discovering Hammer's energy and his badassery, jumping up and down my bed, and just kind of like branching those two elements to, I suppose, to flip on or turn on that creative energy,
that juice. Yeah, it's amazing how
bring it forth.
How good of a dancer he was.
Yeah. I'd love to see him, but like he could appear on Dancing with the Stars or something like that, right?
Yeah, he should. Yeah, no, it's a great record, and I guess it always goes back to something that you had a connection with as a child. I think that really
Thankfully, yes, very early on.
Yeah, it foreshadows what you're into as an adult, and that's really cool to hear that, because I shared the sort of the same experience of like just like jumping on your bed and like getting really excited about the music.
Do you remember like a particular tape or what?
Well, Please Hammer Don't Hurt Him was one. To the Extreme, Vanilla Ice was another.
Yes.
Snoop Dogg's, that might have been a little bit later, but it's Doggy Style, for sure.
How's that?
Yeah, there's many, many more, obviously.
Chris Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Totally crossed out another. And Mom's huge Oprah fans. We watched the Oprah show, and then Chris Cross was on Oprah, and just having the tape, and it's got great production. Like, it's a great record.
Yeah, you can appreciate that now.
I can appreciate it in a more technical sense, mature sense. And then Dad introduced me to. I remember going to school. He'd drive me to school, and I'd just play one song on loop, and that song was "Stairway to Heaven." And I just had my Walkman, my green Walkman, like the classic, like class model, and just looping "Stairway to Heaven," and having never heard really of any music prior to, well, at this time, like not really knowing anything about the history of music or recorded music in this sense, and hearing this one song and just playing it over and just like completely left just completely wondrous about this sound and these lyrics, and then this like completely rocked out outro of the song, and just being compelled by its mystery and drawn into the universe of the Zeppelin, and hence the universe of blues and hard rock, and the universe of recorded music altogether, in a sense that they're celebrated as one of the greatest recording bands, rock bands of all time, with good reason. I mean, the record, they not only wrote great songs, but the recordings are so pristine, and everyone always talks about, we're trying to get the John Bonham drum sound. Well, it's it's just like a perfect storm of elements to have brought together those people in that band and everything about it. So just being completely, let's say, overwhelmed by the mystery of it, because then I remember in grade 6, for some reason during lunch hour, I decided to sing. I attempted to sing "Stairway to Heaven." Then we got to the outro. I was just screaming at the top of my lungs. And I think this was in the same class with regards to the teacher we saw at lunch today. Like, it was her class, and I was standing on a desk, and all the kids were like, yeah, cheering me on, and I was playing "Stairway to Heaven," and at this point I'd listened to it 1,000 times, so I guess performance, maybe my first public performance, is doing a crappy cover of "Stairway to Heaven" in the classroom during lunch. So
nice. Every
every single day it seems like there's a certain love of music, an appreciation, an understanding, a feeling that this keeps growing, sort of like the universe keeps expanding, but not only expanding, but apparently expanding at an increasingly faster rate.
Yeah, alarming rate.
Yeah, and it's really wonderful. So actually, my teacher said, it's great to hear that you're involved in the arts, and you were so excited about music at the time, and you had this talent, and it's great to see you bring that out into the world. And so yes, it's absolutely so. But yeah, I've never really shared that before. I don't think, maybe my schoolmates who might be tuning in someday will remember, I remember when you sang that song, but I haven't thought about that for quite some time.
That's the beauty of doing these podcasts. So I guess for a bit of background, what are some of the music projects you've been involved with in Saskatoon, I guess, as far as like your former bands and that the different stuff that you've been involved
I've been really fortunate to do a lot of music with, I mean, could spend days talking about individual experiences, individual folks, friends, best friends, peers, mentors, and people that encompass all these things all together, family members. But basically,
Did it start with Liberated Noise, or
it
was
pretty much did, yeah. So the Pxrtals is on the verge of releasing our debut studio record, Un Jour, and coming full circle, it's being released by the same friend who called me in grade 12. Hey, Levi, you want to come jam? Come sing or whatever. And so I went over to our friend's parents' home in the living room, saying Pearl Jam's alive. Just shout out to all the classics right now, hey.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
incredibly, we started our first band, Liberated Noise, which was an incredible learning experience, and just having so much fun jamming out Pumpkins. Which shout out to Matt's shirt, very nice. Where'd you pick that up anyway?
I got it online.
Sick. Nirvana and Offspring, etc. Like all the bands that we grew up in terms of grunge being sort of the having captured the imagination in a really large way. So Liberated Noise, and then played.
That was Matt Voino that called you up.
Yes.
To name names here.
Yes. Absolutely. Voino, shout out to Voino. Brooklyn. Out in Brooklyn. And so made some wonderful friends in the band, having started up university and whatnot. I'd love to speak at length, but there's, like I said, there's so many people we could mention, but from there we had From Chimpanzee to Chimpanzee,
Right.
which yes is a Simpsons reference to the Troy McClure's appearance in the Planet of the Apes musical.
That's right.
And
I actually had that soundtrack and bought it just for that song.
nice.
Yeah.
So our first heavily touring project, we went to New York twice with From Chimpanzee to Chimpanzee. We played the inaugural Afro-Punk Festival, which is a huge honor. They're doing really wonderful things in the culture and the scene right now.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was actually doing a double bill of sorts, because I was introduced to the Cats and Volcanoes in Canada.
Originally from Yorkton,
Yes.
Saskatchewan.
Joel, Mitch, and the original drummer Kyle are all from Yorkton, and then Matt Keys as well. Matt Keys is now an actor out in Montreal. He was the original third guitarist.
Oh, yeah.
And
Big energy in that band.
yeah, it was really incredible. It was incredible, and those guys with Liberated Noise was really much a learning experience, like just playing in a band. Chimpan was adopting a technicality and a larger prowess to the songwriting experimentation. Volcanoes was very much about technical application, guitar playing, learning to understand the importance of inflection in the playing, which is a huge part of the Volcano sound, and the energy, and just incredible experiences all around. We'd spend hours just jamming the songs out, chilling out, listening to albums,
Camaraderie.
repeat. Yeah, absolutely. And then
You did a little bit of stuff for Factor.
around this time, I probably met Factor Chandelier. Shout out to Side Road Records and the whole Chandelier crew. You had Kay the Aquanaut on the podcast just
Sure
recently,
did.
and all those guys. I was just remarking earlier that when we were first introduced to Side Road and first heard Spinning Blue Planet and on CFCR, shout out to CFCR too, and just shout outs everywhere. But and third verse on CFCR. I never thought, wow, I'd be making music with these cats, and furthermore with these legendary MCs like Kirby Dominant and Mike and Nine, AWOL1. So around this time, it was introduced to Factor, but we were just doing smaller sessions or infrequent sessions.
The band was called Factor and the Chandeliers.
I've always considered just being part of a Factor's production team in a sense, like as a player, as a contributor. We did put out a record as a group format. Myself, Enver, Hampton from Volcanalist Canada as well, and Reform Party, which we'll get to in a moment, and then yes, with Factor at the helm, and then likewise as part of Factor's team in the studio. I will touch on Reform Party, which followed Volcanalist, which is its own incredible story. Well, every band is really, I mean, if you've never been a band, try to understand being in a really intimate relationship, almost like saying a marriage, even though I've never been married, but like in the most intimate relationship with not a single person, but X number of people in the band combined, and then those people also having likewise relationships. And
a lot of people say that. A lot of musicians say that.
Yes, and then multiplying that by the whole, the general relationship of the group itself, of the band. So it makes for a lot of relationships and a lot of feelings and experiences, so forth. Reform Party was a really wonderful experience, featuring Kay the Aquanaut as well, Enver, and Talis Scott on drums. And we started off as a Rage Against the Machine cover group. Quickly started writing our own material and just writing the craziest stuff. And hopefully we'll revisit it someday. I feel that and many bands have been coming out, like doing reunion shows or tours, whatnot. But I feel in a way like when a group is formed, even though it may disband or may never perform again, like there's an essence, a life essence of the band that created those recordings or those shows that will remain. It's like part of the universe. It'll emanate through space or whatnot. It's always present. So perhaps there's a way to returning to that. From there, we had Slow Down Molasses, and at this point, I was thinking of taking a break from music because things were getting really heavy, and had the opportunity to go to grad school in creative writing, and past that to pursue music and so forth. Teach English in South Korea. Also, that was canceled at the very last minute. Tyson McShane of the band Slow Down Molasses approached me and said, Levy, would you like to go to Europe, join us on tour? Next thing you know, our first show was at the Botanical Gardens in Brussels, Belgium. Amazing venue with some amazing people. Ryan Drabble was in the band at the time, wonderful, lovely human being, and everyone involved. No, Aaron Scholes was in the band at the point, but another lovely, one of the most lovely human beings on the planet, as far as I know. And so because Slow Down has been a compendium of players and friends in the Saskatoon music scene, there's been incredible opportunity to meet and to play with a whole bunch of different people, Miss Jean's Boots, so forth.
Chris Moore?
Yes, Christophe, Monsieur Morin. And who I was always in awe of. I'd see him play at the basement, the old basement, and the beneath the Third Avenue building, and in his band Paper Kites, and thinking, wow, this guy's so cool. And yeah, he's just totally badass, and just had this terrific energy, this viscerality to him. Mm-hmm. And around the time I was playing in Slow Down, that's when Pxrtals, I guess, emerged into being, and I suppose I do consider Pxrtals the not the fulfillment, but the the culmination of every group that I've played with and every, because I've also like I've performed with These Hands, now going by Mike Hands, who's an amazing artist, musician, etc. I'm probably forgetting some other cats, but yeah, shout out to anyone I've had the opportunity to play. You know, even Saskatoon Junior Orchestra,
right?
Which is a lot more structured, but it was a kind of a cool experience in its own way. And yeah, so here we are with Pxrtals, and it's really neat because, again, as a culmination of every group, it encapsulates the whole, I guess, the whole spectrum of sounds that from classical music in my studying of Suzuki, the Suzuki method as a young child, to the experimentation with contemporary hip hop factor, and just bringing it all together as Pxrtals, and also feeling that this will be perhaps a band that I play till death. Like in some ways, maybe at this point anyway, I feel I will keep making records as Pxrtals until the day I die, whenever that is. So,
you're in for the long haul. Like
classic country records in our 70s and this kind of thing, if not sooner. I'm trying to talk to Jean's Boots about making like a Lee Hazelwood, like Nancy Sinatra kind of thing, and I know she's into it, but that might only happen in like 40 years from now. Who knows?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when it's a solo project, I think it's a lot, closer to you, and you can sort of, go the distance with it.
Well, although it is, you could certainly consider it as a solo project, I very much do consider a band, because there's something about the band aesthetic that it's just so cool and so personal to me that I guess there's a duality exists in the group, where it's both like a solo endeavor but also considered as a band, and which is great too, because it's sort of open concept in the sense that I'd like to make a record with these cats, and I was talking to the Slow Down guys about making like a Stooges style record, like 4 people in the room just banging out just some visceral rock and roll and so forth. There's so many ideas and so many people I'd love to like collaborate with and just make part of the band. So in a way, like, everyone is part of the band in a sense, like if it works out, if it fits.
Of course, yeah. And you've performed with members in the band and different people that you've played with before, right?
Yeah, and definitely planning to do that to a much greater extent.
So you also released a mixtape. It was called 1 + 1 =
1 + 1 =.
And I understand there is a new mixtape titled Another Sealed Door.
Another Sealed Door.
In the works, yeah. What can we expect from that new project?
So around the time that I was introduced to Kid A, again by Voino, who he has this like savant-esque ability or perspective on the progress of music, I guess, because I remember he MSN messaged me saying this band is going to change rock and roll as you know it, and that band was The Strokes, and Is This It came out.
New Rockstar Philosophy, right?
Boom. And then same thing, he introduced me to Kid A, and at first I just didn't get it, and I will admit, like, I did not appreciate or enjoy Kid A. But it was the same with Arcade Fire's Funeral. Like, it took me a year before, and I don't know why this is, but maybe that's part of, like, coming back to your first question, like, just being drawn away from something, or just being, like, turned off in order to be, like, really turned on.
You know what I call that?
What do you call that?
Time and place.
Oh!
That's what I call that, and that's one of the reasons why the podcast is called Time and Place, because it's always, there's always a time and a place for you to get into those type of things, and sometimes it's just not the right time. But you will get into it later, and maybe you'll be even more immersed into it later at a later date.
Yeah, I feel I've been really blessed with that sense of perspective, or the ability to capture that acknowledgement, that awareness, and so with Kid A, like introducing electronica aspects to the music, 1 + 1 = was very much a maelstrom of sounds and experiments, and the whole thing was done on GarageBand, and I ran my MacBook nearly ran into the ground, and didn't have a clue what I was doing in a lot of regards, and almost ran myself into the ground, but it was an incredible experience altogether in terms of learning and application and appreciation for but interestingly, I've always been a huge fan of the paranormal and of space, the universe, and history.
Cultures.
Exactly. Just the progression of humanity as we know it, and the world as we know it. And so an incredible fascination with the Great Pyramids, particularly, like, how are they built? We still don't know. Like, there's great arguments to be made in so many directions, but at the end of the day, we still do not have conclusive evidence, and we may never will. But what's interesting is that around the turn of the millennium, they sent a robot up a 60 foot or 60 meter shaft. Sorry, I can't remember the exact distance, and this was televised internationally, and the robot's going up the shaft, and nobody knows how far up it's going, because it is on an upward
pretty sure there's a documentary
trajectory
about that, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. It's really fascinating. But what's crazy is that there's a block sealing any further distance to the tunnel, and there are 2 copper handles on this block, and so evidently it was placed there in person for a purpose, and hence, and I think the narrator mentioned something about, they've discovered another sealed door. And I thought, boom, like, that would make a great title, and for an EDM, electronica-inspired psychedelic disco record, or mixtape of sorts, like psychedelic EDM. It's just bridging, again, my love of, like, 60s psychedelic, say, rock, pop, with a contemporary appreciation for electronic music, and in all its components, all its variances.
That's exciting stuff.
And I will just quickly shout out the debut studio album, which is coming out Un Jour, which was recorded by the one and only Mr. Barrett Ross of the Ross Brothers family clan, out of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. We recorded that at Ghetto Box, which is a really fascinating studio. So this building is a community town hall that was relocated from Vanscoy, probably somewhere in the mid-50s in Saskatoon. And these guys, the brothers, and I was lucky enough to help, and to experience recording a Neve recording console into the building, and so forth. But they had to, like, completely renovate this building. I mean, revaulted the ceilings, refinished the floors, and just, they've been at it for years and years and years. And finally, they're getting just the warmth and the feeling of walking into like a Saturday evening turkey dinner dance kind of affair. It feels so great. And I remember Sean Mason from Dumb Angel. Shout out to Sean. He was playing acoustic guitar one day when I walked in, and it just sounded amazing, because he's not only a great player, but the room kind of like was just cradling him, and cradling the sound, and it just sounds amazing. So, and the Ross brothers are just the most fanatical analog gearheads. Like, they just love gear so much, and they're so appreciative of it.
Well, Barrett being a sound guy.
Absolutely.
They are of course from the band Foam Lake.
Foam Lake, yes, one of the best rock bands come out of Saskatchewan for sure. So coupling that recording experience with mixing by Factory Chandelier brings his mixing expertise to the record, and then finalized by my good friend and cousin Eric Lafrance, who's an incredible musician in his own right, and who runs Jawbone Studios in Moose Jaw. And just bring these creative forces together is just wow, just a really, really powerful feeling. And
So that's your debut studio album?
debut studio album, yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And which originally was not planned to be the debut studio album, but just kind of happened that way in the time and place that
Yeah, there you
that
go.
we are. So
Great. Yeah, no, that I didn't even know that actually. That's awesome. Can't wait to hear it.
yes, can't wait to share.
So you have a lot of I would say philosophical themes in your music, a lot of metaphoric concepts. Can you give us an insight into what you like to write about?
Well, we were just discussing a deep rooted interest in the paranormal.
In the cosmos?
I was talking with my friend Brittany last night. She came to, I was DJing at Flint and was playing some excerpts from Another Sealed Door, and her friend came by, and they're in the library information technology services program, and they're just sharing our love of the library and how the library is such a wonderful learning space, but also a safe space.
Save the libraries.
Save the libraries, yeah. I don't know what's going on, why the funding's being cut, but please, this is an absolutely backwards decision. So I could say some much more heated things about it, but never.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Moving on.
so J.S. Wood was the hood, just north of the Aidan Bowman Collegiate High School, where a lot of friends, a lot of peers in the music scene have come from. And J.S. Wood, just the building itself has this like great architectural layout. There's two inclining ramps that face each other, like leading to the front doors, and I just love those ramps. And it felt like it kind of felt like like a castle in a way. Like it just, we're entering this like great place. Like you enter, and it has this like faintly musty smell, but that's not like gross, like, you know, being an old folks home or something. but more, I don't know, just a pleasant smell of the books, and then you just have this like incredible mass of knowledge and ideas and information all around you. And as a voracious reader growing up, and actually I absolutely love reading. If I could read all day, I would probably just read all day.
Yeah. Like to get immersed in books and information.
Books and film for sure. Just like absorbing. And so I guess a lot of whatever I write about is drawn from that absorption. So in one of my favorite books, well, I think the first like major book I read was The Hobbit. So
Oh wow.
So you're thrown, you're immersed into the Middle Earth universe, and so you have all kinds. And Tolkien was so, like, the writer of The Hobbit, of course, was a linguistics professor at Oxford, and just like this incredibly intelligent person who cared very, very deeply about the detail, every single detail and aspect of the books, and hence allows you to really soak in and picture what's happening with the characters, their emotions, the landscape, the environment, everything. So I was a really big fan of fantasy, sci-fi, and the paranormal. The library, I'd seek out like the, you know, weird creatures from the seas, or mysterious flying, like UFO type books, and read all this stuff and just soak it up and wonder, like, oh, was the Kraken actually a living creature in the ocean? Considering we have no idea what's really happening in the oceans, or we have very little knowledge of it, who knows what kind of creatures, you know, still live or were living in the past, have been living in the past couple hundred years, that maybe have been gone extinct since. But considering that Megalodon, which was like a giant form of the great white, was definitely existed, they have fossil records, is it not fair to suggest that there were also monstrous squid of the type, the Kraken, that probably did attack? Maybe there's only one documented case ever where there's a super rare occurrence that a monster Kraken attacked a ship or was spotted because they never surface for whatever reason. They just live at the bottom of the ocean.
It's very deep.
It's very deep, and so in just thinking about all these things, it sort of permeates into the writing. And then I suppose a joint or bridging that thematically is just relationships with people, the feelings that one encounters, the uniqueness of every single relationship that you have between a single person, a friend, or even just somebody passing by on the street and wondering what is their life story, or where are they going to, or where are they coming from, and just being incredibly
interested, I guess.
Interested by the relationships I've been fortunate to come across in my life, and bridging. So yeah, bridging feelings with a sense of wonder and whatever comes from that.
Yeah, I was a huge fan, always was, ever since a kid. The Loch Ness Monster really interested me.
Yeah, man.
And
which is probably like a modern day plesiosaur or form of like sea turtles, for example, have lived for millions and millions of years. So if the Loch Ness Monster exists, is probably like a relative of that kind of dinosaur or dinosaur type animal creature that was living at the time. And have you heard about that the Loch Ness was actually landlocked? So it's would have been part of the ocean, but then eventually over time has become landlocked, and therefore some of the creatures might have been caught in and evolved to live in the lake conditions, as it were.
Huh.
Of course, I encourage you to do your own research on that, but I did come across that somewhere. So
right on. Yeah, no, that's great. Bigfoot is another one. Always was interested.
Well, again, I think it's silly. I mean, I think it's silly to just right away dispel the fact that Bigfoot doesn't exist, considering that as recently as only a couple, maybe 1,000 years ago, or let's say 100,000 years ago. Again, I have to double check the facts, but you had like cohabitating Homo species existing. And so the Neanderthal or Homo erectus, for example, they probably would have been like a more massive form of the Homo sapiens. And who knows, like there might be a couple still kicking around out there. Who knows? I mean, because as small as the planet is, and we're talking about, a small world at lunch in terms of like connecting community and peers and family and friends and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
the world is still so, there's still so many like patches of unexplored
territory,
terrain and territory. So, until the whole thing is mapped out, I will not, I'm not convinced that, that these like giant human-like creatures maybe still exist or did or maybe they're just a figment of the imagination too. But it's just there's just too much going on, and there have been too many like testimonials, and not only from like Bigfoot researchers or explorers that are trying to monetize perhaps the Bigfoot, the whole Bigfoot like campaign, but I remember I saw something, a documentary on YouTube, I believe, and they were like in Nepal or like on somewhere in that area of the world, and they were talking to this farmer. And this farmer he's not on social media. He doesn't care about any of this stuff, right? Like he's just a farmer living his life and living he looked to me like he's a plain farmer just living his life. But he described the story about him. He's walking down the road and he saw this humanoid type being that, why would he make that up? Like, he
had no reason to.
Because they went to him. Yeah, he's no reason to. And even if it perhaps is an illusion or maybe he saw like a massive bear or something, nonetheless, you could tell in his eyes that he felt he had seen something. And of course, you and Tyler we're talking about your UFO encounters and your matrix
Glitch in the matrix.
Yeah, where you can just tell like you didn't make that up. Like it's not like, oh, I'm writing a script and about, or I'm writing a story and we're just basing this completely from imagination. You feel like in a fully sensual way that you've experienced something that you cannot explain. And I felt that with this farmer, and of course Tyler explaining his UFO story, and anyone I've asked, because I ask, this is a very common question. I ask people like, what do you think about UFOs? Have you seen one? And a lot of people haven't, but it's funny that a lot more people are either opening up about that or admit that, yeah, I've seen something. And a lot of people that just wouldn't BS about this. They're like, myself included.
We will just want to search for the truth, right?
It's out there.
Yeah.
It's out there.
The weirdest thing about my experience, and I haven't had a lot of experiences either, but the one experience we did have was with my friend Chris Wache was, we hit it. We hit the bump in the road. We saw the yield sign twice. And I didn't.
And you grew up in this area, right?
We went there every day, grade K to 12.
Right.
We hit this road. We hit this bump.
This area.
When in the springtime, it dips. It gets even worse. They grade it. But the weird thing is like I didn't even have to explain what we had seen. I just said, "Did you see that?" And he said, "Yes, I did." Like without question, without hesitation. It was, mind you, the foggiest night of the year, but still, we saw two yield signs.
Certainly corroborated that.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
It's weird. Absolutely. Because I did the exact same thing with. I've had two UFO. One or a third one I feel might have just been like my mind's eye, like just an imaginary. But two others that were like completely viscerally, and in both experiences turning to my one friend in one situation and three other people laying on the grass in the second, and asking them right away, did you see that? Okay, what just happened? Let's take a moment here. Did you see it, or what's going on?
Did you see what I saw?
Yeah, exactly. Just trying to make the clearest, most logical sense of this thing that just happened that makes absolutely no sense at all. So,
how do you go about writing your music, and are you pretty experimental with your process? Do you go in mind with a concept, or does it just sort of evolve and happen?
I guess it branches or bridges rather a concept and an openness. Because maybe like anything else, I say it's always best to see both sides of the coin or of the fence in order to best understand the idea or be at peace with the feeling or the drive of the project that you're trying to make, for example. So I was making these weird electronic bleeps and noises, and that wasn't premeditated. And also like the first pre-liberated noise songs, like just completely like, oh, this idea just popped in my head, or again, I might have had a feeling about this girl, so there it is. And so that's always stayed with me. But then I've also been able to experience, to study like great songwriting and learn and collaborate with other songwriters and other people in terms of like how they develop songs. And so there's certainly a technique or a certain foundation that one can adhere to that certainly helps. So right now, let's say I've been consolidating all these song ideas and riffs for what originally was going to be the first Pxrtals record, and I have a gig-sized folder of stuff,
Nice.
Going through, and so it's really nice to be able to organize. But at the same time, you wonder like how Queen's "We Will Rock You" was written, for example. Like, we're gonna make the heaviest song ever, but it's only going to have a drum beat for 3/4 of the song. Like,
yeah.
Or it's not even a drum beat. It's just like,
yeah, simple.
Just stomps and claps, right? Like there might be a tom drum in there. I'd have to listen to the mix again, but and that's the magic of writing, where
Phil Collins, in the air of the night, or that song there. What's it called again?
I think
you know which one I mean, though. That one blows my mind, how the drums kick in after such a long time of just nothing, and it hits you. It just hits you hard.
Yes. In the air tonight.
In the air tonight. Yeah.
There was for 1 + 1 =, there was definitely like a story arc to the record, or to the mixtape album, even though a lot of it is quite deeply made metaphorical or subdued, subliminated.
Yeah.
In whatever way. So I guess it depends to what extent that you're wanting to reveal the influences, or the evidence, or the subject matter of the songwriting. So that plays into like how the song, to what extent that the song will sort of have like a realistic, more of a realistic or fantastical context to it. But sometimes it's cool. I mean, sometimes like you just wake up and there's just this idea and it's there. Other times you have like a certain structure in mind that you're wanting to develop, and like I said, bridging those two aspects together to hopefully form something that is engaging and
right.
But because like Un Jour, for example, the majority of the record was written in one night, in January 2014. I was sitting in my room feeling quite dejected about a lot of things, and then boom, like the first Dchord came out, and it's one of my favorite chords. Like Neil Young rocks it, and You'll Know Us by the Trail of Dead, one of my favorite bands. Like very powerful use of the Dchord, and from there, like before I knew it, my roommates, Bisneer Lodge, shout out, they were playing NHL and just chilling. Yeah. They're chilling in the living room, and so I remember listening to the voice memo after like recording these 10 songs or whatever, hearing them like cheering when somebody scored a goal.
Yeah, in the background.
So and to this day, Mattz, I have no idea where that came from. It's so mysterious. Like
comes out of nowhere.
It really comes out of nowhere, or comes out of the ether. Maybe it's transmitted from space, from a different time, or a different plane of existence. But yeah, it's a really good question. I don't know. really not sure.
Yeah, that's part of the process.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you play violin. I just wanted to state that you also play guitar in many of your bands, and you also play bass guitar. I'm not sure. You play drums too, obviously, or
not very well. I'd love to. I wish I was much stronger drummer, because it might be one of my favorite instruments to play.
Yeah.
But I love jamming around. But I played trumpet in grade school. I recently purchased a trumpet again, so I'm hoping to blast it out.
Nice.
To get back on the horn.
Awesome.
And I'm just, at this point I'm down. Like I've been playing some more piano as well. Just down to really play anything. It's just cool to try different instruments.
Yeah. Well, Jim Morrison of The Doors had stated in an interview that he thought the computer music would be the way of the future.
Yeah, that was on their PBS special.
Yeah.
I just watched that recently.
So as a solo act and producing music on the laptop, do you feel you're sort of fulfilling his prophecy?
Well, I feel I've jumped aboard, because there are many great composers that interestingly predated his statement in the 60s. People that are starting computer music in the 30s, 40s, 50s in
Kraftwerk.
Well,
comes to mind?
yeah, they very
Not
much
necessarily
popular.
computer,
it,
but
but very much
electronic.
Exactly, because have the opportunity to like create a full symphony on a computer. It's really fascinating, but at the same time, it's definitely not the same as having a room full of people.
Yeah.
Sonically, it just does not achieve the same quality and feeling of sound. And so, in a way, yeah, Jim was right, but I don't suppose it'd become the absolute norm, because it's what's the same with like film? Like there's just a certain quality to the technologies we've been talking about, like an analog technology with film itself, that retains a certain like I don't know, humanity, or a certain personality that is just lacking in some regards digitally. So, and then yeah, who knows where it goes from here? So,
can you tell us a little bit about the Portal's name? Was it inspired by Jim Morrison and the Doors?
If I have to say yes. In a way, it's sort of an homage and a subtle evolutionary nod to the Doors, because again, aside from I've had just the most incredible introduction to music. So we're talking about Hammer, Cruisin Cross, and in grade 6, my friend Paul Bazin Webster, we were on the playground, and he pulls out Body Count, debut album, and I'm seeing this cover of this like big gangster looking dude. I'm thinking, what? This guy is crazy. Like, what is this? And the music was insane. Like, Ice-T and the band, like, and they were breaking boundaries all over the place. And then grade 7, it was Mr. Bungle. My friend introduced me to Mr. Bungle, and another like one of the most mind-blowing bands to exist. Just in so many ways, but maybe predominantly in the way that they just blended any and every kind of music and were just masterful at whatever it was: jazz, death metal, lounge, pop, Beatles or Beach Boys style, West Coast, like particularly on their final album California. And then so with the Doors, the other song that really captured, or my dad's like the biggest Doors fan, so I think that has been genetically passed on. But I would say with good reason, because, and I've talked to a few promoters. It's interesting to talk about, people either love or hate the Doors, but I think it's more of like a love-hate situation with the singer Jim Morrison, who, yes, admittedly had like some really terrible performances and would just get so wasted he couldn't even sing. And as a fan, it would be, I remember actually seeing Coheed and Cambria. We were so stoked. We had the crew, the Bisonier crew, and the college crew, and we went out to Calgary, the Calgary edition, and it was Coheed's, like, they had just released In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3, like, just an incredible record. But Claudio, the lead singer, had also released his debut comic at the same time, so he was chugging JD on stage, and we actually drove out to see Coheed in Minneapolis after the fact, so all props to Coheed, like the rule. But that was an example where like my friend was devastated because Claudio was too drunk to sing, and he did acknowledge and apologize to his fans after the fact. But even though it was like a really cool experience to like be there and be there for like the meltdown, it was also a bit like, my friend just really wants, she like drove out 6 hours to, so it's kind of, I think, so it's more of a love-hate with like Jim's performance, right? Because the band as a whole, when they were on, like, I would suggest that they're one of the tightest, most magical, untouchable bands to ever grace our ears, and they're so connected. The intimate connection of those 4 people in that band is just untouchable, as you just put it. And so just growing up to love the Doors as much as my dad, there's certainly a nod with regards to the Portals. But then having to, of course, throw in a twist with spelling the Portals with an X instead of an O, so Pxrtals, or the infinity symbol, or really the X serving again in like mathematical language as a variable, which pertains to the music itself. Where I'm really excited to. So I was talking about making like classic country record. Well, I also want to make hardcore record someday, or a more oriented hardcore record, or
math metal.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd have to. Who was I talking? Oh yeah, I was talking with Mike LaFrench about this, and we were talking like my love for technical. I'm a huge fan of Dillinger Escape Plan and Necrophagist. Just bands that like just technically are so. But I have to put in a lot of practice to or gather the people that can perform at that level.
Yeah, Cephalic Carnage.
I haven't heard too much Cephalic Carnage.
Oh, dude. So good.
Are they? Where are they from? The States?
Oh yeah, pretty sure. I don't know exactly where. I think they're from. Yeah, kind of an unexpected place. I'll have to look into that, but yeah, definitely the States.
There's so many great like technically proficient bands that you're just so, like Adeline, for example, from Saskatoon, like unbelievably proficient and just write like some of the most complex. Who else could we shout out?
Sparky.
Absolutely, Sparky is our Saskatoon's Mr. Bungle, in my opinion. Canada's Mr. Bungle. I think they could do anything, and it just, they have this confidence, this certain strength to the sound and to their playing that brings that forward.
When they opened up for Lamb of God, Randy Blythe actually came over and told them that they were like a spazzy Mr. Bungle. Which
Very
is
nice.
a huge compliment coming
Very
from
nice.
a guy like him. Yeah,
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's lots of those types of bands in the scene, that huge talent,
Absolutely. Into Eternity, for example. There's Dirtbread. Just bands that are like, holy, wow, like, that is awesome. Like,
blow you away.
Shredding.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, but then you realize, like, you listen to like Les Paul player or any of the classic country players, and it's like they're playing as technically proficient material, but just maybe with less distortion or in a different musical sphere, with no less ability or awesomeness to their playing. We were talking about JS. Well, yeah, we're talking about libraries. That popped up in my head again, but with regards to like where songwriting came from, but. Of course, libraries have been a great source for music discovery too. So discover a lot of films, a lot of music through the library, not only books, but just a great center of learning altogether.
Free music.
Yeah, just thankfully that the library purchased, and they were sort of the first, like, I guess, streaming. Libraries provide the first streaming or peer-to-peer service, right? Like,
for sure. And that actually brings me into my next question. So 1+1 was a mixtape, and
I like to consider a mixtape album,
Yeah,
whatever that means.
of course,
But
yeah.
it's like
I guess meaning like it was released for free online.
yeah.
In that sense. So what's your take on the physical release? Is that a thing of the past now?
No way. Man.
with bigger artists like Chance the Rapper, and actually I just heard The Life of Pablo became the first album to go platinum that was
really?
just from streaming.
Huh.
Yeah, isn't that pretty crazy?
Well, I'd love to see The Life of Pablo artwork on a 12-inch sleeve, like a vinyl sleeve. I'm sure Kanye would agree. Like, the intent of the record is to be fully experienced, because you really can make, again, the same sense of a digitized photograph, the same way that if you're holding the thing in your hands. I don't think it'll ever be a thing of the past, because again, it's part of our humanity. It's like, you could watch you could watch a campfire on your television screen, but I don't think you'll ever get past the beauty of lighting a fire and you're getting a bit of smoke
Being
in our
there,
faces,
yeah.
being there in person. I think it's just ingrained. It's part of our human capacity. If it wasn't there, then we're not here anymore or something like that.
Yeah. Last night you were DJing at Flint.
I call it more. I was thinking about this. Like DJing implies disc jockeying, and because I wasn't really playing turntables, as I've done before, like spinning vinyl is really cool. But I call it more mixing, I guess. But I don't know. Maybe we're getting too technical. Whatever.
You were a long-time radio host for CFCR's radio show Learn to Sing.
Yeah. Green Eggs and Ham started out 6 to 8.
Yeah.
And then graduated to Learn to Sing.
So how did that help you in becoming, I guess, a DJ as well?
Well, interestingly, I also, for a summer job, I DJ'd at the Pat.
Whoa, I didn't know
R.I.P. the Pat.
Now a parking lot.
So I spent a summer there, like DJing the top 40 hits, but then I'd make use of the sound system. And I remember one night I was jamming out some Mars Volta, and it sounded awesome. I remember playing Q Not You, Mars Volta. I probably even played some Volcanolus. And but yeah, back to CFCR. It was just learning how radio works, learning how to play a song on cue, and learning about timing, and of course they have 2 turntables in operation. So when I started getting to vinyl, learning how to properly handle records and using the tables and whatnot, and just being introduced to a multiverse of music.
Right.
Like so many across all styles and sounds and timelines. Special shout out to the Monday night lineup that I was a part of with Brian Cochran for lowercase J's, and then Mitch Greer, who ran Closer to the Edge, which they're both so influential in so much music that I've discovered, particularly like in jazz and in earlier forms of music, that because up until high school is pretty much just a grunge, like 90s, I thought, oh yeah, like all these other bands prior to the 90s, like whatever, maybe with the exception of Zeppelin and the Doors, but even then, like just being sort of like just narrow-minded about it all, and CFCR have really helped to just completely broaden my whole expanse of music. So
develop that. Yeah.
And I was always a fan of turntablism. So I remember actually, coming back to like early music projects, my friend and I remember we had a turntable and we were just like scratching a record on the turntable, and we enjoyed the sound of like the record scratching, and just like kind of messing with like tape modulations. I'd make like weird little comedy tapes with my other buddies and just like rewind them, and then sometimes a tape would speed up, or like we'd cue it up or whatnot, and just like make these like crazy sound effects, and then just learning like there's just a magic to mixing and a flow that that can completely captivate a person, an audience, and it's really beautiful, particularly when if a person or an audience is is having a bad day, or they're just like music can save lives, and I've seen it happen. It's happened to me. I've had people come up to me and say that, and then so if you're in the middle of a wonderful mix or a concert or whatnot, and you have this great mix of songs or whatever it is, a radio show, you can really provide some healing, and that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Therapeutic.
Exactly.
Speaking of therapy, you also paint. You have paintings by Lavie, which is your painting collection. Tell us
Some
a
of
little
them,
bit about that.
Well, I think before I got into music, I was drawn to art. No, pun intended, maybe. Uh, but I always drew, like, so drawing was like the first artistic output, but I never, like, I was doodling and whatever through school. But then when I started playing guitar around the age of 14, 15, and shout out to my dad for getting me my first guitar that he salvaged from a buddy who was going to throw in the garbage or get rid of it, and so he salvaged this guitar, which I still have. And I'm not sure of the make, actually. The headstock has this like circle with a dot inside of it. I think it's like a French guitar. Anyway, so I never painted until quite recently, and actually I have to thank particularly my mom, who is a painter, is an amazing painter, who has made some really amazing tableaus, but before I was ever born, and she's never painted in my life since. So I've encouraged her to, or I would like for for us to paint sometime, but maybe whatever happens. She's more of perhaps an admirer now, an appreciator of the painting. So mom, because she had a canvas, we were cleaning out my parents' basement, and then she gave me this canvas, and so I did my first painting on it, thinking, and this was, during the Reform Party era, and at the time, Kay the Aquanaut was staying at the Bosnier because we were basically rehearsing almost every day, and and developing a great friendship. And one day Kay said, so I have to really thank Kay for, in so many ways. He also helped me get my job at Prairie Harvest. Shout out to Prairie Harvest Cafe, one of the most delicious, best restaurants in Saskatoon.
Amazing food.
Absolutely amazing. We'll go there next time.
Yeah.
We were actually going to go there today, but we hadn't. I was just craving. I've been there like 5 times since I've been back in Saskatoon, so and was just really craving East Indian food. Anyway, so Kay said one night, we'd watch documentaries, music videos, etc. after jam, just hanging out, and he said, "Have you ever heard of Jean-Michel Basquiat?" And I said, "No, I'm not sure." And he said, "Okay, we're going to watch this documentary called The Radiant Child." And it's weird. It's Mattz, it's like a light switch was turned on. And after watching that, I said, "Holy moly, I feel like painting." And I started some smaller drawings. And I basically haven't stopped since. And so this was around 2012. So we're about 4 or 5 years removed from that now. And I probably have, I don't know, around 60 some pieces.
Oh, wow.
About 30, 40 that are completed, another 10, 20 that are like still in production. And then I also, and I've consolidated this list just quite recently as well. I have probably at least almost that many on cue in my mind to produce.
Mm-hmm.
That
Ideas.
that just need to be executed. And I also have to thank Pickle as well, my very good friend Mike Ramondo, who we met during our days at the City of Saskatoon skateboarding park and meeting at 9 times. Shout out to 9 times 2. So because we met skateboarding, and I did a lot of cinematography for him. Like I helped him film his sponsor me videos for Circa and other companies. And I really enjoyed filming because I'm not a really good skater, but I just loved skateboarding, and it was a way to be part of the gang and the scene. And then our paths diverged. Pickles and mine's paths diverged. So for a few years, and then only recently we reconnected, and found out he had started painting, and he is working harder than anyone I know, like painting, and it's really inspiring, and he's been pushing me as well. So we've had painting dates, and it's great. It's quite a lot to take on both. I guess two fields of work, both in visual arts and in music, and trying to take them on at the same time and like really elevate yourself in both areas. But but they do complement each other in so many ways, and it's beautiful to see the parallels in this that are found. One can discover in doing both activities, and one thing actually I have to admit, like one thing I love about painting is that you can both paint and play music or listen to music at the same time.
Right.
Whereas you can't really do that in the inverse way. However, somebody told me recently, I think it might have been Kay, or somebody said, "Man, there's somebody like out there in the internet verse that is is playing music and like drawing at the same time or something like that." So I'll have to look into that. But
yeah,
it's really peaceful, and
is it therapeutic for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly therapeutic. I'd love to. Well, actually, I after the podcast, I'm planning to go home and work on a painting. I have one that's sitting. Coming home, I realized, wow, I have all these paintings sitting around, and a lot of these are unfinished. So I want to get to these, and because people people really appreciate, I think, an original piece of art because it's like a part of your feeling. It's just this genuineness that you're presenting in an object that just isn't the same if you're getting a print, like a print of a well-known painting or whatever, which is still very nice, but there's just something like really personable and
character.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking of a song lyric the other day. It just kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I'm a nobody, but that's somebody. I'm a nobody. I'm nobody, but that's somebody. So in the same way that something has to come out of nothing, because even empty space isn't empty, and every single day I think people are realizing this more and more, and new discoveries are making sense of that. So I would say, yeah, I'm probably tapping into, maybe I'm attempting to tap into the universe's ethos, or again, like all of my relatives and perhaps living and both deceased that were artistic or had some sort of artistic vision or gifts, and drawing on that, perhaps
paranormal forces.
Exactly, like paranormal love.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we'll end her there. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
A great conversation. I hope you enjoyed listening or watching this video podcast. Catch all the podcasts on my Mattz 9 YouTube channel, or subscribe to the Time and Place podcast on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and we will catch you on the flip side.